Today on Biblical Higher Ed Talk, I sit down with my colleague Dave Metters to take a look ahead at our 2024-2025 leadership development opportunities. Want to sharpen your leadership edge? Tune in to hear about our upcoming conference lineup. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm your host, Philip Dearborn, president of ABHE, and we are honored to have as our guest. If you're actually watching this on video, even before I say the name, you're going to recognize the face. But I have Dave Metters, who's a colleague of mine, and thrilled to have him on the show today. And if you've been around ABHE any length of time, you certainly know who Dave Metters is. And I've invited him on today to chat through leadership development at ABHE. There are a number of opportunities that are coming up this next year. And if you want to sharpen your leadership edge to become a better leader, then we've got something that you ought to consider doing. So Dave, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Great to be here, Philip.
So we're going to talk about leadership development, all the things that are coming up. But before we do that, share with us something that God has been working through you or something that he's shown you recently in your life.
Well, just recently, our pastor was preaching, and it was from Luke chapter 5, a very familiar passage. This is about Christ back in Capernaum. The crowds were so thick. There were 4 friends that couldn't get their friend to Christ, and so they carried this paralytic up on the roof and dug a hole in the roof and let this guy down. And then the interchange takes place, where he says to the paralytic, your sins are forgiven. And there are some religious types that are saying, so who is this? And he says, understanding their thoughts, so what's easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or get up and walk? And then he heals the paralytic and away he goes. And I was distinctly impressed as I'm listening to him back across my journey of 19 years at one of our institutions, and then what's happening right now across ABHE institutions of friends. It could be a youth pastor, it could be parents that are helping students make their way to ABHE institutions. Yeah. And on our best day, what we do is help students find the forgiveness and the healing of Christ, to where they can get up and follow Christ with all of their heart and stay on mission with Christ for a lifetime. And sometimes it's as radical as punching a hole through the roof. I think of miracles that have happened that have helped students, whether it's financial aid or other arrangements, the right roommate, whether it's online, on campus. But I just thought, and I prayed then, and I pray now, as all of the people across ABHE, their friends and Christ, it's this unique expression where he says he saw their faith, meaning the 4 guys, and then says to the paralytic, your sins are forgiven. It's wonderful for our faith to be a part of bringing people to this profound experience with Christ. Yeah. And this summer, there'll be teams going out to youth camps all across North America where that very thing is happening. And it sends a chill down my spine of how the Spirit is at work, and people are going to come and experience Christ in great ways on campus this fall, this year.
It's what motivates us forward, Dave, and you and I have had so many conversations about this and what's motivated you through the years. And recently, you had an opportunity to sit down with some youth workers and as well as youth back in the day to kind of reflect back over how God has been just so faithful through those years. Tell us about that.
So this was just several weeks ago. A lady reached out to us. She's in her 80s, and she and her husband were parents of teenagers when I first came out of seminary in 1977. So this was better than 40 years ago.
And just for the listeners, I was 5 years old back then. So at least I was alive.
I was a little more than 5, but very young. And she said, why don't you come over and we'll get a crew of those that are still alive together. And we drove over to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and had lunch with better than a dozen. These were parents now that had been led to Christ by a wonderful senior pastor, and their kids now are all grown up and have kids that are going off to college. I got a card from one of the ladies there, said, our two daughters gave their heart to Christ when you were a youth pastor here. They followed Christ since that time. It's just fun to see where the psalmist says your truth endures to every generation.
Yeah.
And that's the work we're in.
Yeah.
Whether it's digging a hole through the roof or asking teenagers, tell me about your relationship with Christ, and encouraging them. It's a great season.
It is. It is. And we look at the demographics of the people who listen and watch our show, and they come from all over the United States. So just a caveat there. For those of you who are in the South, you understand what Dave was saying there when he used the term roof. For the other listeners who are north of the Mason-Dixon line, or perhaps international listeners or viewers, roof is another term for roof.
Tomato, absolutely. They were fixing, if we said in the true South, for those listening with roots and developed cultural heritage, these four guys were fixing to cut a hole in the roof.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we better keep moving along, because we only have a half hour here, Dave. But thank you for sharing that, and just a great reminder for us of why we do what we do. You're celebrating 15 years this coming September at ABHE. Talk about the vision that you had 15 years ago when it came to our leadership development process and program to where we are today.
Well, I want to reach back actually 34 years when I attended a workshop, a leadership development workshop at an annual meeting. It's the first time I heard a workshop on enrollment and the enrollment funnel and the admissions process. And that began a journey with a colleague then, who's now a senior fellow, retired. But some 15 plus years ago, we listened to Ralph Enlow in an interview for president, and he shared for the first time that accreditation, it's a service ABHE provides, but it's not truly the business we're in. It was the beginning, the kernel thought about, so what business are we in? And it's about flourishing institutions, fundamentally. It's about helping institutions fulfill their mission of preparing students to live on mission with Christ. It's the Great Commission. And when he recruited me to ABHE 15 years ago, there was every other year a leadership development conference for new presidents 1 year, new chief academic officers, kind of to get them started, orient them to ABHE and the accreditation process, and some words of encouragement. The philosophy underneath leadership development is that flourishing institutions are led by leaders who are at the top of their game. Mm-hmm. And a role that we can play is helping network leaders together and help them go through the learning curve faster and get up to speed quicker so that they become more effective in what they're doing. And there's been literally thousands over the last 15 years where we've had above 10 conferences a year, all of the C-suites plus other specialized conferences. And it's networked leaders together. We're stronger that way. As the Proverbs writer, cord of three strands isn't easily broken. So it's been a fun thing to see the conference programs developed.
Yeah. And obviously everything happens within the context of the sovereignty of God. And, but God depends on us and his way of how he does things. And, you were the human instrument that God used to really build out to where we are today. And Carol, who's our colleague, has been along your side and helping with a lot of the design and getting things out. And it's just been really, even the last 4 years that I've been part of ABHE, just to see the growth in our leadership development process. And I think it's one of those things that when I served at an institution, I came to ABHE events, some of the leadership development events. I presented. but also absorbed and learned. And sometimes we approach these things thinking that we're going to have this revolutionary thought or idea planted that we're just going to go and change the world. And sometimes that happens. But at a lot of our events and some of the testimonies that we hear are just people attending, networking, and then just getting a series of nuggets that they can use. And I'm one to think that, boy, when we go to these events, just to kind of, if we're just one tick better as a leader, we're better, and our institutions are better because of the experience that we have had at these events. Talk to us about some of the feedback that you hear from our events.
Well, I concur entirely with what you just said, Philip, is that we believe leaders can change, but typically it's not like night and day, overnight. All of a sudden there's a revelation. I'm an entirely different, more effective leader. We grow in a good conference. At least our goal is that you make connections that make you stronger. So that when you come up against a problem, you know some other people that are pursuing some of the same kind of things you are, and you know who to reach out to. And you also have come up with a few good ideas that you can implement. And we grow by that, step by step. So part of the DNA of a leadership conferences, and all of them are built on a curriculum of some 7 different competencies or areas of information that relate to the specific C-suite. And then over a 3-year cycle from fall and spring conferences and the annual meeting, we deliver that curriculum. We reach out to our veteran leaders across ABHE and beyond as presenters. And that's part of the DNA of what the conferences look like.
Yeah. Last year, we tried something new, and, we've been at it for 15 years. So we've been tweaking it along the way so that we just want it to be a great experience for people. Tell us about what we started last year with the assessment statements after the end of each presentation to kind of give something tangible that participants walk away with.
Great question. And actually, that process started 5 years ago in the board governance training program, which what the Murdoch Charitable Trust brought to us was a goal of when training is completed that a person leaves with a narrowed focus of 5 action steps. And so this past year, we incorporated that into our leadership development conferences. Every presentation has 5 assessment statements. Attendees will evaluate these 5 on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being, I really need to pay attention to this and go back and give it my attention. 1 is that we've got this tucked away, we're doing pretty well. And so at the conclusion of 5 presentations in a day-and-a-half conference, an attendee is going to evaluate all of these and come away with their own personal action plan. Here are my top 5 issues that I need to address when I get back to campus. The goal is to tilt the engagement more away from just being a spectator, but I come here with my sleeves rolled up, ready to both hear and to think about where I am in my leadership journey and what do I need to do next. And there's been a lot of very positive feedback on that.
So last year was the first year we did it for all the conferences. And the other thing that we do is the last session of the conference is an opportunity for participants to actually work on what those 5 steps or those 5 areas that they're going to focus in on. And some of the richest conversation that we've had at any conference for 15 years has been in that last session, where we break up the group and the presenters actually sit with a small group and they kind of go through. There's been tears shed, there's been challenges put out, and it's just been really neat to see the bonding that happens when people have a shared experience together and then they identify areas that they want to work on in their leadership. It's personal, their spiritual life or their work life, and they walk away with something that they can actually put into practice.
And it's been neat to see just in that closing session where we've asked every participant, so what are your 5 action steps? And so it's an opportunity for every participant to say, this is what I've heard and this is what I plan on doing. And to have a closing time of prayer and commit these things to the Lord and mutual encouragement, it brings a good, sharp focus to the closing of it.
So we're on the eve of launching our 24-25 conference season. We have a total of 11 different conferences happening this fall and into the spring. So just take a few minutes, Dave. Let's walk through what the offering is. And for those of you who are watching or listening, in the show description, we're going to put a link to each one of the different conferences that are coming up, and you'll have opportunity to register for those. But kind of walk us through chronologically what we can expect over the fall and spring.
And Philip, maybe before we do that, maybe I should introduce about the executive certification program.
Sure, go for it. Yep.
Each of these are tied to one of the C-suite. There's 6 of these that have an executive training program that I referenced earlier on this. And so in a day and a half conference, you would earn 15 points. The total certification delivered over 3 years could be 100 points, et cetera. And there's been upwards of 100 leaders across ABHE that have enrolled in the executive leadership training. There's a reference or full description of that on our website, so you can see it there. This fall, we start off in September 24-25, 2 full days with an institutional assessment conference where the commission leaders are going to do training on how do you establish a comprehensive institutional assessment program sponsored by Weave. Then October 1 and 2 is the Advancement Leaders Conference, and the focus for this year is on the annual the annual fund, sponsored by the Timothy Group, but it will include presentations like Todd Parrish from Welch College is doing his doctoral work. He's interviewed a number of presidents and advancement leaders about the state of advancement work across ABHE. There's work in planned giving and developing the annual fund and the role that major donors play in the annual fund. Then Bill Corver from Carolina College of Biblical Studies will be presenting on the president's role in the annual fund and fundraising. So we'll have a great time there. Then following that, October 8 and 9 is our annual Enrollment Leaders Conference. This is likely the highest pressured group in ABHE. They deliver on the fall enrollment every year, sponsored by NACAP, and these will be outstanding leaders on all the different facets of enrollment, effective enrollment leadership. This year, for the first time, we pulled it from the forum that is offered in the annual meeting to making it a twinned or a dual conference on Thursday and Friday of the same week. It's Enrollment Marketing Leaders, sponsored by Kaler Solutions. And there's 4 or 5 different presenters in this conference that's going to help enrollment leaders understand how to be more effective in marketing their programs.
So pause right there, Dave. One of the changes that we've made this year is the twinning together of conferences. Just give us a brief. Why did we do that?
Well, part of it is like this conference, these 2 conferences I just referenced. A person can come on Monday, arriving at their own convenience. Then starting Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock through Wednesday at noon, they're in the first conference, Enrollment Leaders. Then Thursday morning, starting then and through Friday at noon, is the Enrollment Marketing. And so with the cost of one round trip, you get both conferences. And on Wednesday afternoon, there's going to be an opportunity for consultants that are present to connect with people that are there, and you can have a time of personal consultation. Bart is doing on Wednesday evening before the conference starts Thursday morning, a special session for those interested. This will be at the hotel on engagement in AI and marketing. So twinning these, same thing will happen between the presidents and the academic leaders conference later. It just provides an opportunity where people can come for 1 week and cover both. So after the enrollment marketing, the next on October 29 and 30 is the President's Conference, sponsored by Campus, the Timothy Group. And that's pretty obvious, but there's some great, Joe Stoll is going to be there sharing with us again, and several other presidents across ABHE on some key areas of effective presidential leadership. That's Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday and Friday are the Academic Leaders Conference, sponsored by Campus. Great academic leaders are going to be talking about crucial emerging issues that relate to the Chief Academic Office suite.
And I'll stop you right there. One for the presidents too. We have Greg Henson coming in, who's at Sioux Falls Seminary, Keros University. They have a very intriguing model of how they do education, competency-based education. So that's definitely a highlight there, and really looking forward to that. Matt Hall, who's the provost at Biola University, will be there for the academic leaders. So some pretty high caliber people who have some influence and leadership experience as presenters at these conferences.
I'm tempted to drill down in both of those conferences, Philip. You're going to show links that have all of these, but there's some great presentations by presidents and academic leaders of this.
Mm-hmm.
We move ahead. It's going to be in November, is the Student Development Leaders Conference. It's November 12 and 13. Some great leaders, Lisa Stewart from College of Biblical Studies in Houston, and Bethany Thomas from Southeastern, Kirk Sabin from Kingswood, Brian Jaworski from Corbin, Luke Jones from Our Daily Bread, but talking about how to serve this generation and how to provide a safe campus. This is Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday and Friday, then sponsored by Moody, is going to be the Sexual Harassment Title IX Conference. We moved it to the fall, twinning this since student development officers often carry key responsibilities for campus safety. So coming for one travel experience, those two conferences together provide a great experience. And the day-and-a-half conference on sexual harassment, Title IX, we moved it up with the new regulations out. This conference will drill down what are the requirements now that are in place, what do institutions need to be aware of, and how do we serve our institutions well in sexual harassment Title IX compliance.
And we just hosted a webinar on that topic and had 130 folks from across all of our institutions attend that. So I imagine that's going to be a pretty full conference. So I would encourage you, if you're listening to this, jump on and definitely register for that one, as regulations have changed and what you have to do to demonstrate compliance with Title IX. It's much different than what it was before. So critical training conference.
So the moving ahead in that, and maybe I should say for all of these conferences, participation is in two different ways. You can engage virtually, you can engage on site. I'll come back in just a moment of, at least from my perception, some of the differences in that. But in the spring, we have 3 more conferences. In April 24-25 is going to be Online Education Leaders Conference. Right before that, our Financial Leaders Conference. That's going March 25 and 26, and then Achieving Accreditation Standards in May. So 3 more, total for 11 for the year. If I look at the whole breadth of this and say, so if the options were there before a leader, what's the benefit? What's the return on investment?
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you're on site is you get the shoulder times of engagement with presenters and other attendees over meals, refreshment breaks, etc., which is not available for those that attend online. For both, you get the presentations, you're engaged in the Q&A, you come away with a strategic action plan. So there's high value and a very modest cost for people that are engaged virtually. Thanks to our sponsors is the only way we do this. All of these day-and-a-half conferences include 2-night lodging and 6 meals and all of the program, and a very reasonable cost, making it possible. So we would love to give a great, warm Southern welcome to all of those as they choose. So which one is most applicable to where their growth area is, and welcome them to the conference. All the way through the Student Development Leaders Conference in the fall, the registrations are now open.
Mm-hmm.
Within a couple of weeks, the sexual harassment, it's open. We'll have the program schedule done in a couple of weeks because the new regulations have just come out. Andrew Smith from Moody's working away at getting that program hammered out. We'll have 4 different presenters as a part of that, so we're excited about it. But you could register for all of those in the fall right away.
Yeah, and you've mentioned all of our sponsors, which I really appreciate for the conferences, and we appreciate their investment in this. That's how we keep our costs controlled for these events. So, just to reiterate, travel is your responsibility. If you've been to the ABHE offices, we're real close to the airport, and your registration cost that you pay covers your hotel expense for the conference, as well as your meal. So from a professional development perspective, you get a lot of bang for the dollar that you spend. And I know that college budgets aren't limitless, and especially in the current economy. But when you look at what professional development opportunities there are out there and compare it to what our costs are, boy, it's a tremendous value, and we do make it available thanks to the generosity of a donor. A couple of years ago, Dave worked to get our Weber Center fully equipped with a Zoom room. And while it's not the same, obviously being in there in person, you still get the content of it, and at a significantly reduced price that you can tune in. But my recommendation would be, even if it's not on an annual basis, that you're getting down in person, because I remember as a chief academic officer coming, and we definitely got some great content. But honestly, I came away with relationships, and just being able to have, like you said, that shoulder time, going out to dinner, going out to lunch, being in the hotel with people, just grabbing a cup of coffee, casual, of, hey, you know what, I'm experiencing this. Is that something that you've had experience with? And the relationships that you have, and that you're able to build, just really encouraged me in my role, but then also gave me somebody that I could reach out to throughout the year, whatever issue came along. Just having those relationships is a phenomenal piece of our experience.
And you mentioned about our sponsors. I should say this just in terms of an encouragement to our listeners. There's almost $80,000 invested by sponsors in these leadership development events for this coming year that are committed.
Wow.
So the price points that people pay to come, it's being underwritten in a significant way by organizations that say, we believe in you. We want to be a part of your success. We're leaning in this together. So some great resources. I'm very encouraged,
Yeah.
very humbling.
Yeah. Many of our listeners who are part of this podcast are ABHE, are serving at ABHE member schools, but a growing number of listeners aren't. There are other colleges and universities, whether they be Christian or even some secular schools. Talk to us about availability of these conferences outside of the ABHE context.
Great question, Philip. And these are not closed events. We believe in what God is doing across the landscape, and it's not just an ABHE institution. I was so encouraged this past spring at our Title IX conference. We had representatives from 5 institutions outside of ABHE. I think I can say without equivocation, they all felt very welcome. We're not an exclusive kind of bunch. We're all in this together, and we believe in each other. So there is a member price and a non-member price. There's a differential of $100, and so that's respectable. And part of that is just a recognition of the support from member institutions that pay their dues to ABHE, et cetera. But we warmly welcome people who come and want to learn and are a part of a collegial atmosphere.
Great. Well said. So, Dave, we're coming to the end here. We've got about a minute left. Any last thought or a word of encouragement for our listeners about our leadership development programming?
Well, leaders are learners. That's the philosophy behind this. And we might not be in all of higher education. We might not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but we've been called of God. And we believe His grace is sufficient. And just like the creativity and the persistence that these 4 servants carrying this paralytic, getting him to Christ, we believe Christ has called leaders across ABHE, and there's grace and creativity and perseverance that can help us bring more students into contact with a campus experience, a institutional experience of knowing Christ in a deeper and real way. We believe that's there for everyone. And we warmly invite those who can make this a part of their journey of rolling up their sleeves and say, let's give God our very best and sharpen the edge of our leadership skills.
Well, thank you, Dave, and thank you for putting these events together. You take leadership over that, and you do a phenomenal job. So, on behalf of all of us who are different because of your work, thank you for your investment in us over these 15 years at ABHE.
Thank you, Philip. My great pleasure.
So if you are listening and watching and want more details about our upcoming season of conferences in the show description, we will definitely put a link there. Just go to abhe.org and you can access all of our conferences under the Leadership Development tab. And early bird registration is open now, so feel free to get on there and take advantage of a little bit of a cheaper price as you make plans to attend. So until next time, stay kingdom focused.